3 years ago, I stood on this stage and my family was behind me. We had just come from a few days before having swept Missouri, Minnesota, and Colorado in the 2012 primary election cycle. After that sweep, the Wall Street Journal editorialized about my economic plan, saying it was a supply-side economic plan for the working men and women of this country. I talked about in this speech that we needed to unite America with someone who is pro-freedom, pro-family, pro-growth, and also pro-worker. We have seen that wages over time have stagnated. The economy, median income, is declining in America. We need someone who can unite this country around a vision, an economic vision that can pull us together. A vision that's focused on working men and women who are struggling in America today. A vision that says we can restore our manufacturing base. We can improve our infrastructure. We can increase our energy development. All to help the people in this country who are lagging behind and feeling like neither party really cares about them or talks about them. I talked about the 70% of Americans who don't have a college education and what we need to do to restore vocational education in our high schools, to put parents back in charge, not the government. Back in 2012, I wasn't for Common Core, and today I'm still not for Common Core. After the campaign, I wrote a book called Collar Conservatism, laying out the vision for how we can unite America around helping those who are struggling in our society. I was doing a book signing in Des Moines at the Republican State Committee. I just happened to be in Iowa, passing through, and a woman dropped the book in front of me, and I said, well, who'd you like to make this out to? And she said, Janice. I said, well, it's nice to meet you, Janice. And she said, oh, that's not my name. I said, well, who's Janice? She said, that's my hairdresser. And I said, your hairdresser? She said, yeah, we don't agree on anything, but she loves you. I said, really? I got to ask you. I said, why would your liberal hairdresser love me? And without missing a beat, she says, oh, because you're for the little guy. Of all the workers in America, only 10% own their own business. 90% are little guys. Pundits have often wondered how I was able to win 11 states, even though I was outspent 4 and 5 to 1. They posited it was because I was simply the last man standing. They were wrong. I won because I stood for someone, the little guy, the American worker. And if we're going to win in 2016, we need to stand for the little guy too. 2016 is going to be a different election, though. The world has changed. We don't need just someone with a strong economic plan. Thanks to the Obama-Clinton foreign policy team, we have gone from a policy of peace through strength to a policy of lead from behind, and it has been disastrous for the American people and for the world. In fact, the president's popularity is so bad around the world today that I heard this report from a source that the Kenyan government is actually developing proof that Barack Obama was actually born in America. The fact of the matter is, we're in a very serious time. I was in Israel 6 months ago, and I spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu's senior advisors. And he pulled me aside, and he soberly said, in 2016, America needs to elect a wartime president. The world is a dangerous place. It's more complex. We need someone with real experience to be able to rebuild our military. The likelihood that we're going to face a former Secretary of State means that we need someone who has a long and deep understanding of the threats that confront us, particularly the threat of radical Islam. To be clear, it wasn't just the president's liberal outlook, but his profound lack of experience that has created the problems for us here in America. Commander-in-Chief is not an entry-level position. And the Oval Office is no place for on-the-job training, not in times like this. You see, unlike the president, I have 8 years of service on the Senate Armed Services Committee, where I was a subcommittee chairman overseeing science, technology, all of our land and ground forces. Before and after 9/11, I worked to retool our military to something we called asymmetric threats, we now call terrorism. After 9/11, I took a deep dive to try to understand this new enemy of Al-Qaeda. And I found out it wasn't a new enemy. This is an enemy that has been attacking the West for over 1,000 years. 1,000 years trying to expand their territory in the West. We need someone who understands that and understands that the radicals today are simply working out of the playbook of over 1,000 years ago. Over the past few months, we've seen the American public rightly question the president about his refusal to identify the enemy. They're asking the question, how can we defeat what we refuse to understand? We can't. We can't defeat somebody unless we understand them and fashion a plan to defeat them. But refusing to embrace the reality of evil is nothing new. In the 1930s, Winston Churchill warned the world about the gathering storm, and the world sat quietly by until it was almost too late. In 2006 through 2009, I traveled the country. In fact, I gave my farewell address to the United States Senate about what I call the gathering storm of the 21st century, the rise of militant radical Islam. I was called everything from Chicken Little to a warmonger. The first speech I gave was in the summer of 2006, after I had worked to try to pass a sanctions bill on the Iranian nuclear program that I had authored. We failed by a few votes. Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, John Kerry all voted against Iranian sanctions at the beginning of the understanding of the development of the Iranian nuclear program. I said in that speech that defining this war as a war on terror was like defining World War II as a war on blitzkrieg. Terror is a tactic. It is not an ideology. We had the moral clarity and the courage back in World War II to call Nazi Germany, Nazi Germany, even though only 7% of Germans were Nazis. Some have suggested that only a small percentage of Islam is radical or militant. Even if 1/10 of 1%, 1 in 1,000 Muslims are radical, violent Islamists, that number is larger than the active duty military of our country. This is not a JV team. This is not a threat to be passed off. In the 1930s, we should have known, we could have known what the threat was. All we needed to do was read the book. Hitler told us what he was going to do. We chose to ignore him. Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Iran, the Muslim Brotherhood. All we need to do is read their books, and we will know what they want to do to the West. ISIS wants to establish a 7th century caliphate. They want to behead, crucify, burn, torture, enslave. In response, the Obama-Clinton foreign policy team refused not only to acknowledge it, but they insist that the greatest threat to American security is global climate change. Ladies and gentlemen, we don't need a weatherman-in-chief. We need a commander-in-chief to run this country. We need to start by crushing ISIS now. We must start in Iraq. We need to get ISIS out of Iraq. The first thing we need to do is arm the Kurds. Instead of sending them bandages and body bags, we need to send them weapons to drive ISIS out of Mosul and out of Iraq. We need to increase aid to Jordan, Egypt. They want to fight. They're warning us of this problem. And America needs to engage. We need to engage with a two-pronged strategy. Number one, we need to put boots on the ground. $10,000 is what General Jack Keane testified to. $10,000 to coordinate airstrikes, to provide advice, training, and intelligence. And yes, we need to do airstrikes, not 5 or 10 a day, not a public relations stunt that the president is doing today, but we need to take serious destroying ISIS. We need to hit ISIS to defeat them. If ISIS wants to establish a 7th century caliphate, well, let's oblige them by bombing them back to the 7th century. Finally, I agree with Prime Minister Netanyahu. Even if the world bands together to defeat ISIS, if Iran gains a nuclear weapon, we will have failed our time. In the end, Prime Minister Netanyahu would not be coming to America. He would not be risking the most important national security arrangement that Israel has if it wasn't for the fact that he believed in his heart that Iran's and the United States nuclear negotiation is going to end up being an existential threat to his country. This is a dangerous time. But here's the good news. Elections matter. 2016 is an opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, just like 1980 was. In 1980, it took one election and one president to return America's standing and to defeat evil in the world. In 2016, we need another president prepared to make America again that shining city on a hill for all to see. Thank you, and God bless you.